for having singled out Graduation.
I would love to talk about my favorite Lil B music as well.
Oh, okay.
And I promised myself I would take you to task for giving "I'm Gay" a 0.
Well, that was out of trolling. That was out of trolling.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see.
But like, I mean, I'm still to this day just like blown away by so many parts of God's Father. I think that's just such like an amazing mixtape.
That's an incredible tape.
It's an incredible tape.
I think Hoop Life is my favorite like Lil B project. It might be because that was like when I was really, really getting into his music, but I just feel like it has so many highlights. But the MySpace collection is of course really legendary as well.
And all the early Clams stuff, you can't really forget about all the early stuff that he was doing with Clams Casino, or just the stuff that he really kind of started to break with.
It's so crazy how much Lil B music there is that is like where it felt like he was rapping on instrumentals that were like light years ahead of what everyone else. It's almost like I think one, he's a visionary, but I also think he does so much music that like there's also a bit of a sheer volume aspect of that as well. But just for your listeners, a couple Lil B songs I want to shout out. I would definitely recommend the song Super Saiyan. He raps over the song Sakura from Dance Dance Revolution Extreme. It's a really, really interesting experience. There's one from the MySpace collection. Oh my God. Listen to the song I'm Okay from the MySpace collection. This beat is actually unbelievable. I need to know who made it. It's like, it seriously feels like something from like 2022. And this beat, I think this must have been one that he did like in 2000 like 12, maybe 2013. It's from the MySpace collection. No, earlier, like 2009, like MySpace days. Yeah, the song I'm Okay from the MySpace collection, like that beat is so futuristic. And I don't know if you've, Anthony, I don't know if you've heard the Porter Robinson bass freestyle as well, but
I have not.
That's worth your time.
Okay.
Yeah, Porter Robinson bass freestyle is awesome. It was my girlfriend got in touch with him over Twitter to be like, I'm wondering if you can do a freestyle for Porter for Christmas. And he was like, yeah, I'd love to. Like, what do you want me to talk about? And he was like, well, Porter really loves your cat Kiki. And he was like, okay, I'll mention Kiki. And he talks about the animals loving him. It's so good. Yeah. Porter Robinson bass freestyle is very rare.
I'm going to look it up.
Yeah.
I think what you say about the instrumentals is just like such an excellent point. Again, to sort of like take it to Clams Casino, he was just working with producers that nobody else was, or just deciding to hop on beats that nobody else was. But I think that was a mark of him just like being the genuinely outsider artist that he is. I think he's like, I honestly, I think he's hip hop's most successful outsider artist. I don't think there's going to be another outsider artist as successful as Lil B. Somebody who is like genuinely like outside of the commercial loop.
Yeah.
And, to what degree that they are in it, they're completely in it just for themselves and just like, on their own.
It's so interesting though, because I think that like, I also think that Lil B I think he's a very capable rapper and lyricist. Like when Lil B chooses to bar up, he really, really, it can. But my favorite work from him is his stream of consciousness stuff, because it's like, it's a place I would love to be as an artist. I would love to be able to
both places have their merits and sort of a vibe. As you were just saying, like if you watch his XXL freestyle, like,
oh my God,
literally everybody, like,
everyone's like,
I don't think there was anybody in that room who wasn't like familiar with his reputation and like knew that like,
and he goes so crazy on. That's one of my favorite videos of all time. Yeah, it's his freshman freestyle, right?
Yeah, he goes much harder than everybody had expected, and he was in the same room as Kendrick at that time.
Yeah, so that's so weird looking back at like that group of people.
It was Kendrick, it was Yellow Wolf. I'm trying to think of who else was in the room, but everybody was just like, oh, he's rapping. Like he's actually like, he's not just like young bass god, blah, 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 blah.
That stuff's good too. I will ride for that.
But it is good. But it is good. But the thing is like, what people don't understand is that Well, what people didn't understand at the time, like I think what a lot of people like don't really take into consideration, and this is what is sort of like sad to me a little bit, because you know, it's odd. I went through a period personally of like, you know, appreciating Lil B, you know, and like I guess but like being a little annoyed with the fandom sometimes, because like it seemed so rabid that like you couldn't really have like an interesting conversation about it, or like why it was so interesting, or why it was so good, or like what made it click or what made it tick necessarily. You know, it was just sort of like, let's just, you know, blindly praise this as much as we possibly can, which, you know, I appreciate the meme of it. You know, I appreciate, you know, sort of like you know, the repetition of sort of like the joke, and how significant that was to sort of like spreading his popularity over the course of that time. But, you know, now that that's like not as strong as it used to be, it's now been sort of replaced by, I think, like a lot of ambivalence. There are a lot of like younger music listeners that have like no fucking idea who Lil B is, or like how, or like how radically different he was when he came onto the scene. Because I think a lot of what he did, like a lot of what he did through like 2009 to 2012 has really just like become normalized.
Yeah, it's
like,
so true.
A lot of what he did from that point is now just like the standard. Like, we're just going to riff. We're going to hit you with as many ad libs as possible. We're going to rap on some kooky beats. And essentially, when the song is done, it's going to be more about the energy of it than it's going to be about anything that we said.
Right. And that's something that happens with music a lot, is that the stuff that is formative in the given in the creation of any given trend or sound, or the stuff that predicts the future, can sometimes be hard to appreciate down the line because of the things that were influenced by it. And it's like something that was really formative can be hard to understand or not feel special because people have heard the imitations of it or the refinements of it, even of those ideas. And yeah, sometimes it's really interesting when you find the genesis of something you really like when you discover who your favorite artist's actual inspiration was, and you're like, oh, like this is what it sounded like to them back then. But yeah, I still think like I still think Lil B also has the best ad libs in the game, bar none. Like,
no, I agree, you know, but it's, you know, again, but I'm just thinking, it's like, you know, how do you get to a point where, you know, Migos are going world famous off of like Versace, unless before that point you have Ellen DeGeneres, Ellen DeGeneres.
Swag.
I feel like Ellen.
Brang dang dang.
Brang dang. Little, you know, it's, I really loved that point when, you know, the mainstreaming of Lil B, when ASAP Rocky was like popping off, and then he sort of like, you know, referenced him in that bar on like the, you know, his first mixtape where he's like, Lil B, brang-a-dang, which is like, that's such a, it's so funny hearing that like brought into the wider world, because like when you just listen to that by yourself and you hear that line for the first time, and you're just like, it's such a mind-blowing moment, because like you're literally listening to the obliteration of all like conceptual reverence, reverence for like lyrical expectations, you know, lyrical standards, which is not to make the point that like the lyrics are bad. You know, it's merely your reveling in, I'm just going to flip the bird to, you know, the quote unquote standards of what people say I should rap like, or the things that I should say. I shouldn't just throw out. Go on.
Yeah. It's kind of punk to just be willing to do that. And like, I think that a lot of music that breaks new ground comes from people who are like completely unself-conscious and
like
are willing to do it wrong. It's
punk, but simultaneously it's so fucking the roots of the genre to begin with, because, you know, what is brang-a-dang? What is that if not literally like circling all the way back to the hip, the hibba hibbity, like what is that if not just like, it's the same fucking thing. You're just coming up with like rhythmic drivel that's really catchy. That's really catchy and ear grabbing, but you're just doing it in a different context for a new generation. But the thing is, like at that point, people had gotten so far, like their heads so far up their asses with like what lyrics should be. Like hearing that, people were just like, oh, that's just silly.
Mhm.
you know, where it's
Yeah,
like,
that's
but
that's interesting. I had not considered that about like how that there is a connection to the origins there. Like one thing that I'm always careful to put the asterisk on too is like I'm not like a hip hop guy. Like I'm not a student. I don't know a ton about the origins of like rap or hip hop. I just like I have my obsessions and the things that I follow really closely. But yeah, yeah. Thank you, Ben
well, I mean,
Scott, and
I think that's to sort of your point, because there's something to be said that when Little B was taking off, it was very much with like non hip hop audiences.
oh, that's true.
You know, like it was the hip hop scene that he was getting the most pushback from. You know, that like the older establishment of it
Mhm.
at the time, like not just because of his songs and his production and his lyrics, but they'd go crazy in the comments over the fact that he's wearing a purple low cut
Yeah,
fucking woman's t-shirt, that he's wearing
yeah,
that he's wearing skinny jeans.
yeah.
But
He's a
again,
pretty
it's
bitch.
he's calling himself a pretty bitch.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, you know, it's funny to think back to that, because it's like all of that sets the groundwork for like a Young Thug. All of that
Mhm.
sets the groundwork for any number of other
Yeah.
things that, again, like just seem like way less mind blowing now because it's all just become normalized.
Right. Yeah. I do think that I mean, I don't know that much about this again, but I do get the sense that he's respected by so many people that came after him.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah,
he is at this point. I think
yeah.
he's been around long enough, and he's like overcome that wave of hate for so long that like, and again, it's like people who've been following for this long understand like the sea change that's happened over the
Mhm.
past 10 years, and the degree to which Little B sort of like predicted all of it.
Yeah.
And he's definitely way more respected now than he was when he came onto the scene. You know,
I'm
I mean,
happy. I'm happy for him. Yeah. He made a lot of songs I really liked. Like there's so much to analyze with Lil B, but like the reality of my experience with it is if you open up my Spotify or whatever, like whatever music streaming service, and you just sort by like what artists I actually listen. I just listen to so much of his music. Something about it just like makes me feel. It just makes me like it's almost aspirational for me. It's like I wish I could be that vulnerable. Like a song like
I think you're letting us in on what the next album process is going to be. I mean,
again. Every interview comes back. I'm going to start rapping.
you heard that soundtrack, and you're like, this is, I need to attain this, and now you're just like constantly coming back to this Little B music. And
Yeah.
I think there's probably like, you know, there's an extreme rawness to it that
Mhm.
is so raw, it's like euphoric,
Yeah,
which
exactly. It's like I feel like there's a part of me that wishes that I could just just make something and put it out there and not worry about it. And I spend a lot of time like worrying about it and obsessing over it. And I think that that's part of like, I think it's part of the reason my music sounds the way it does is because I, I try to only show like the top, I think like 3% of the things that I kind of make. And I put a lot of time into refining them. And I try to make it exactly to my specification. I try to make it as good as it can be. And like I'm so interested in what it would be like if there was a world where I loosen that filter a little bit more and just release more music, you know. But yeah.
Thank you very much for watching this interview clip over on TND Streams. To see the full interview, click on the video link next to my head or down below, or hit up the link to subscribe to the channel or see our Patreon page to support what we do and get some extra bonus monthly content in the process. Anthony Fantano, forever.